everybody, my name is Lauren and I wanted to make another video about living in Mexico, and I think this is probably the most important question and the question that is on everybody's mind is how much does it actually cost to live in Mexico, especially when you compare it to countries like the US and Canada, Europe, a lot of other countries. So this video is going to be very general. I lived in Mexico almost 8 years, but we've primarily lived in central Mexico. We've lived in Mexico City, larger or semi-large cities outside of Mexico City, and then right now we live in a pretty small town in the state of Guanajuato. Not San Miguel. San Miguel is like its own thing as far as prices go. Everything in San Miguel is going to be more expensive than where I live. So that's my point of reference. Obviously, Mexico is a huge country, very geographically diverse, and it's like anywhere. There's really no like upper limit. If you want to pay more and more and more and more, I'm sure you'll find somewhere that will let you do that. But this is just like a general guide. I'm going to go through it pretty quickly, so if there's anything that stands out to you that you would like me to make further videos on, I would be more than happy to do that. So any one of these could be its own video. So the main thing, of course, when you go to rent is going to be renting. I'm going to make another video in the future about what to expect when you're renting and what sort of questions you should ask when you're renting. But generally speaking, in Mexico, it will be cheaper to rent for the equivalent place as the US. So for example, if you want to rent a penthouse in Manhattan, that's, similar style in a really exclusive part of Mexico City or Guadalajara or whatever large city, is going to be cheaper. But not every place is going to be cheaper. So just because it's in Mexico doesn't mean it's going to be cheaper. Even within Mexico City, you're going to see a huge range based on neighborhood. So if you want a really trendy neighborhood, kind of touristy like Roma or Condesa, for a room, like you're going to pay 5, 6, 7,000 pesos, which is right now, at the rate we're at now, would be about $250 just for a room. Whereas like if you go to another neighborhood that is still safe, but like not maybe in the trendiest part, you could get an entire 2-bedroom apartment for that price. And then again, if you go outside of Mexico City to a smaller city, you could get an even nicer apartment, or the same, let's say the same kind of apartment, for maybe 2,000 pesos, about $100. So, and that's going to be unfurnished generally. Like all these prices are general. Like nothing is set in stone here that I'm talking about. So that kind of gives you the range. And of course, like I said, if you want to go up from there, you can pay 20,000, 30,000, 100,000, 200,000 pesos if you want to for a house, an apartment. Like I'm sure if that's what you're in the market for, you can definitely find that. So that's sort of the idea to keep in mind. It's also important to keep in mind that if you rent somewhere, if you choose in a neighborhood or part of the city or a city that is more trendy, more a place that people want to be, a place that is well known with foreigners especially, everything around you is going to be more expensive because everybody around you is also paying higher rent. So restaurants are going to be more expensive, street food is going to be more expensive, haircuts, even people that might come to your house like plumbers or whatever the case may be, probably will charge you more. And I would say that's generally the case in the US as well. People who live in more expensive neighborhoods generally are going to pay more, taxes are going to be higher. That's kind of the world that we're living in, and that includes Mexico. So that's going to be, again, a huge variety in rent. I would say If you go, and this is not including Mexico City, I'm talking about maybe a smaller city or even a rural area, the cheapest you could possibly find for an apartment would be maybe 1,500 to 2,000 pesos. But again, that's just really going to depend on location. So as far as food goes, I would say, like we all, I think, feel like if you move to Mexico, a lot of the reason is going to be the food, right? Like, I mean, Mexico is known for having an amazing cuisine, wonderful produce, and generally speaking, the food is going to be cheaper than the U.S. My point of reference is the U.S. That's why I keep referencing the U.S. And I'm from the Midwest, so where I'm from, it's like pretty affordable U.S. So that's sort of my point of reference. So if somebody's from a more expensive part of the U.S., you'll probably be even more like surprised by some of the prices. Produce is if you go to the grocery store, like the chain grocery stores, it's still going to be cheaper than the US, but it's going to be expensive by Mexican standards, generally speaking. Where we have lived, the cheapest produce that we have found has been Mexico City. They have wonderful produce. It's really fresh, really great. But in order to get good prices for produce, you have to go to the tianguis, or in Mexico City, some people will call it the mercado. Other cities, when they say mercado, they mean like the supermarket, so that's an important distinction. Again, produce is going to vary a lot, and it's going to be whether it's in season or out of season. But generally speaking, and I'm looking down at my notes here, if you were to spend, let's say, 100 pesos on in-season produce in the tianguis in Mexico City, that will get you about 5 to 6 kilos of produce. So that gives you a pretty good idea. And a kilo, I think, is 2.2 pounds. So for those who are not used to metrics yet, get used to metrics. So that's just a general guide. I'm not saying you probably don't want 5 to 6 kilos of, maybe you do, but that just can give you an idea. And 100 pesos is about, right now, it's about $5. So it's really, really good prices. And again, we're talking about the tianguis. In most neighborhoods, like you'll have like one big tianguis maybe once or twice a week, and then there'll be smaller around the city. So in different neighborhoods, we'll have them on different days. So just if you ask your neighbors, make Mexican friends. That's usually my advice. And people will be happy to tell you like where to go to get, there are certain tianguis that are better for certain things. So if you want produce, there will probably be like a tianguis that would be better for that. That would be on certain days. I would say grocery stores in general are going to have similar prices to the US, although it's been about 2 years since I have visited the US, and sometimes when I go there, I told my husband I feel like an old person who's like traveled in time. Everything feels really expensive. So I think generally it will be cheaper here. Obviously, if you're in a smaller town, you're going to have less options. Just keep in mind that a lot of the foods that you might be used to having in the U.S. Actually might be more expensive in Mexico, or not as available depending on where you live. So like peanut butter is not as popular in Mexico, so we still buy it, but it's like, for us, it feels expensive. If you like different types of cuisine, obviously you can still find it, especially if you're in a larger city, but that kind of thing will actually probably be more expensive than what you would find in the US. So if you like Indian cuisine, or I don't know, Thai cuisine or whatever, that's generally going to be more expensive. Restaurants, street food, again, restaurants are going to be cheaper for equivalent. So if you want to go to a fancy restaurant, generally speaking, it's going to be cheaper in Mexico than the US. But obviously there's a wide range. and smaller towns, you're probably going to find cheaper food, but you might have less variety. So that's just how it goes as far as price. And the same for street food. Street food's going to vary on location, where you are. Like I said, if you're in a more affluent area, everything's going to be more expensive, and that includes street food. So atole, if you want to buy tamales, generally the same kind of tamales in an affluent neighborhood is going to be more expensive than in a more working class neighborhood. Like we have a local pizza place that delivers. We get like a kind of medium-sized pizza. You get like 1.5 liters of a cola drink and French fries, and it's about, I think, it's about 200 pesos. No, 130. I'm asking my husband. How much? 150. 150 pesos. So it'll be about $7 for that. That's unusual. Like that's cheap. So check with my husband. All right, so we have internet and electricity and water. I'm going to go through this super fast. So electricity is going to be, you're going to pay that every 2 months. So it's important to look at if you're renting somewhere. If you live like a Mexican or try to, your electricity will be a lot cheaper than the US. If you want to live like an American, I realize how much we waste. It will be much more. So we have, where we live now, I'm looking at my notes here. We have about a 4-bedroom house, but we're very conscious of our electricity. The way my husband built our house, we have higher ceilings, so we don't, the way the weather is here, we don't need a heater. Sometimes we use a fan at night when it's like warmer out. Without the fan, we will pay between like 100 to 200 pesos for every 2 months. So it's like $5 to $10 US for electricity, but that's with no fan. So obviously it's going to make a huge difference if you want to be having like a heater is going to really increase that price, or if you have lots of fans, if you need air conditioning, those types of things are really going to put up your cost for electricity. Internet, the cheapest price you'll probably get for internet is about 400 pesos, up to, if you want like the most elite type of internet, would be like 1,500 pesos. That's would be a lot. I mean, if you want to pay that, you can. Where we live right now, like our road outside is like a dirt road. We still have really good internet. We have like, I mean, it's not great, but it's about 30 download speed, and we pay about 400 pesos a month. So that's pretty good as far as for the US compared to the US. For water, it's going to vary a lot where you live. Where we live in Guanajuato right now, we get 10 meters squared of water. If you go over that, you'll pay more. And that's 120 pesos, so about $6 a month. If you pay for the year for that, you get a 10% discount. In Mexico City, just to give a comparison, so 120 a month limited in Guanajuato. In Mexico City, it's 130 for 2 months, and you get unlimited. So, but not all neighborhoods would get water all the time, so it's a whole different thing. We can make a whole another video about that. As far as transportation costs, it's really not necessary to have a car anywhere in Mexico. Of course, you can have one if you want. I'd say the prices are pretty similar. The thing that is going to be cheaper is maintenance. So we have a really old car, and we probably wouldn't have been able to keep that car if we were in the US, just because it wouldn't be worth it, like, to keep the maintenance up on it because of what it's worth. But because because the maintenance costs are generally cheaper, that allows us to keep our car longer, because who wants to spend money on a car that's just going to get old. Even so, so you're welcome to have a car. I don't drive because I can't see very well. Um, but yeah, so, and some people don't feel comfortable driving in Mexico. Again, that's a whole nother video. Every town, even very small towns, unless it's super small, are going to have local buses. So that's an option to get around. Um, right now, as I'm filming this, we're like in the middle of it's the beginning of 2021, so we're still in the pandemic. So a lot of these things right now don't necessarily apply, but I'm just talking about in the good days where hopefully things go back to normal. You will have local buses. They're pretty easy to use. Sometimes it can be a little bit confusing, so again, it's good to make friends. You can ask people at the bus stop. People are generally pretty helpful about telling you which buses to take. Taxis, Uber, they're going to be cheaper than the US, generally speaking. Well, yeah, they're going to be cheaper than the US, but they're going to vary by Mexican cities. Some cities will have Uber, some cities will not. If you're in, I don't know about other cities that have the subway. I've only taken the subway in Mexico City. It's a really great option, especially if you're going to parts of the city that are more crowded. It's very cheap, very, very clean, very easy to use. Obviously it's crowded because it's a large city. I've never had it's not a thing that I've used on a daily basis, but never had any problems. I definitely recommend trying the subway. Just, yeah, it's very easy. Again, doesn't really apply as much right now, but if you want to travel to other cities, so if you're living in one, city and you want to go somewhere else, there are different types of buses, all different levels, very affordable, generally speaking. I will say that just like they have more expensive buses, it's not always better. Like, we took a bus one time, and the more expensive bus, like, the company was actually like not as friendly, and the driver took longer than like the bus that was supposed to take longer. So it can be a little bit tricky trying to figure out which bus is the best one to take. And then of course walking, because most places, like where we live in Guanajuato and even in Mexico City, cities are pretty walkable. And like where we live, like I said, we live in kind of a dirt road, but we're right off of like a regular road. And even within our house, just within like a few streets, there's like 5 or 6 small stores that just sell, general stuff. So, it's, if you don't have to like drive everywhere or take a bus or if you just need like, I don't know, sugar or eggs, or you just want a snack or something to drink or something, you can walk quite easily to different things, and obviously that's going to depend on where you live. As far as like entertainment, I think one thing that is definitely cheaper in Mexico City than the US is going to be the movie theater. Again, not really possible now, but in Mexico City, I would say one ticket, if you're not like a regular ticket, not VIP, be 80, 100 pesos, $4 or $5. But where we live, in a small town in Guanajuato, again, not San Miguel. San Miguel's its own thing as far as price goes. All 3 of our family members can go to the movie theaters, get popcorn, get drinks, see a movie for about 300 pesos, so about $15. So it's much, much cheaper. And then local and cultural activities. Every town, even small towns, are going to have, it's important to look up different holidays, Mexican holidays. But generally speaking, in the downtown, almost every week, they're going to have music, they're going to have some kind of thing going on. So, and the downtown and wherever like the main area is going to be together, they're going to have some kind of activity or some kind of thing happening. It just depends. This is also going to be very specific to the US, because Like obviously if you're from Canada or Europe, you guys are gonna have much better with this, but as far as healthcare goes compared to the US, like it's not even a question. It's much, much, much cheaper. If it's just for general care, like if you have a cold or something and you want to go to a pharmacy, you might pay 30 to 50 pesos to see a doctor, about $1.50 to $2, $3, $4. And then plus any medication you would take, the medication is going to be cheaper. Private hospitals are another option. They're going to vary in price a lot. To see a private doctor, the cheapest you would like maybe pay would be 150 pesos, but that would be, I would say generally speaking, you're going to pay between 200 to 500 pesos to see, like on the low end, to see a private doctor. Obviously that price can just go up and up and up and up, depending on where you are and the type of doctor. Again, I will say, I'll probably make a video about it, like just because a doctor charges more doesn't mean that they're a better doctor. I'd say one of the worst experiences we had with the doctor was in Mexico City. She was by far the most expensive doctor, so it was a good learning experience for me. Like just because they charge more doesn't mean they're better, and just because they charge less doesn't mean they're not a good doctor. So it's important to keep in mind. And then also depending on where you live, a public hospital or public doctor might be a good option for you. Those public services are going to vary a lot depending on where you live and why you're going to the doctor. So, but it is a good thing to keep in mind. So if somebody says, oh, they had a good experience in the public hospital or a bad experience in the public hospital in Mexico, that may or may not apply to where you live. And they used to charge sometimes where you would talk to a social worker, and then they would put you into different categories and they would charge you based on that. For the public hospital was still, pretty low. My understanding is they're getting rid of that, at least in some places, but I think it's still unclear exactly what's happening. But with public hospitals, I mean, the cost is going to be pretty low. Private hospitals, the cost can vary quite a bit. So this is just a general overview if you're interested in just the basics of living, how much it's going to cost in Mexico as a general rule. Again, we live in central Mexico. We don't live near the border. We don't live in a beach town. We don't live in a tourist area. Even when we live in Mexico City, we don't live in a, very expensive area. So, multiply this by, 3 or 5 if you're going to live in a really expensive neighborhood. And if there's anything specific that you have a question about, or if there's anything specific that you would like me to make a video about in the future, I would be happy to do that. I know this was kind of long and I went through everything really quickly, but it's just to give you a very general overview about the costs of things if you're thinking about potentially moving to Mexico. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.